Now, normally I wouldn't bother with a story like this, okay? It's just some guy trying to champion his cause du jour, and I just fucking let them be, but this is just such a functionally retarded take. I just couldn't pass it by. It brings up two things that I'm very passionate about. One is electoral reform. I definitely do not condone thinking that anybody's votes should be counted twice. And I also like dispelling stupid people who think that they're intelligent. Like, this dude is the textbook definition of functionally retarded. Now, there's nothing to be gained for dunking on people that are, like, actually slow, and that's just kind of rude and awful, but this dude at least had the balls to publish this and goes around championing this idea. Like, ugh. As you're going to see here, even in the first couple of lines, this is quite possibly the hottest take of 2020, and that in and of itself is quite a big deal. So yeah, this isn't going to be very long, but it's going to be pretty funny, I think. The votes of Black Americans should count twice. No. Just on the face of it. No, absolutely not. Because, okay, one of these things where all of these race baiters like to do, they like to come in and they love to fucking float the race card in there, but an easy way to check to see if something is racist is just invert it. Okay, if you're going to read this headline, should Latino votes be counted twice? Should Asian American votes be counted twice? Should white American votes be counted twice? Does any of that sound intelligent whatsoever? Yeah, exactly. That's kind of what I thought. Vote reparations would empower us to replace oppressive institutions with life-affirming structures of equality. Do you need some croutons with that word salad? Holy shit. Let's try to unpack this for a second. Vote reparations. I understand, it used to be 3/5, but that was a long fucking time ago, and Brandon, you never had to deal with that, my friend. Would empower us to replace oppressive institutions, like the ones that allow you to publish this brainlet article? Oh, okay, fair enough. With life-affirming structures, okay, are you such a weakling that you need your life affirmed at every single level? Because if you do, you should probably just consider getting yourself a really comfy couch and just staying at home for the rest of your life. Structures of equality. There's nothing equal about this whatsoever. This is all about equality of outcome and not equality of opportunity, which everybody and every institution should actually be striving for. Most of the ones that work do strive for opportunity or quality of opportunity, but the future that's staring us in the face right now is definitely looking like one of equality of outcome, and I'm not thrilled about this. All right, here we go. Ugh. Black votes in the country are worth less than white votes. Bold statement. Bold statement. Joe Biden won the Electoral College. Okay, if we're going to make a categorically incorrect statement in the first sentence, we might as well carry on the tradition throughout. Because black voters in Atlanta, Detroit, Milwaukee, and Philadelphia turned out in significant numbers. Sometimes they even brought their dead relatives. But even with overwhelming black support, 94% of Detroit voted for Biden. Nothing to see there. It's just, I guess, all of those really inflammatory statements from earlier in his senatorial career just really energized the black vote to get out there and support the old racist. With the outcomes in Georgia, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania were worryingly close. Yes, because they barely cheated enough to win. Anyways, one core problem is the Electoral College. Of course it is. Of course it is. And here's where it gets fucking hot. Wyoming, which has just 580,000 residents and is a 93% white. Oh, that's terrible, right? You know, you're free to move about the country whenever you want. That's not just Southwest Airlines slogan. You can literally go live there. It's fucking dirt cheap and your dollar goes so far. I've looked into houses there and oh buddy, what you can get for the price that you'd pay for just a studio apartment in a moderately large size coastal city. No word of a lie. Like a 2-story house on acres of land. 350. I'm not joking, and that would be a house that's like under 10 years old. Anyways, gets 3 electors because of 2 senators and 1 representative in the House. In my opinion, that sounds like fair representation. 2 senators per state, and depending on population is how House representatives get allocated. What's wrong with that, other than pointing out the fact that there's a metric shit ton of white people, and you know who else lives there? Kanye West and Kim Kardashian. So I guess that 7% is for her ass, but I digress. By comparison, Georgia's 5th congressional district, which includes Atlanta, has 710,000 residents and is 58% black, has no dedicated electors or senators, and can only occasionally overcome the most white and conservative votes from elsewhere in the state. Okay, couple of things are wrong with that statement. The 5th congressional district only encompasses 75% of Atlanta. The 11th congressional district also takes into effect for Atlanta. Just because it has 710,000 residents within the city boundaries, you have to take into account that there are 2 congressional districts for that, and I've got the map up there to prove it. As you can see right there, it might be a little bit small, but you can trust me, but at the same time, feel free to pull up a map for yourself. So Atlanta is mostly taken apart there, and then as you can see in this blue area right here, that is the 11th congressional district that takes up the north end. Now, that is mostly a Republican area. They kind of go back and forth when it comes to voting. But as for the city center for Atlanta itself, he says, good old smart Brandon here, has no dedicated electors or senators and can only occasionally overcome the most white and conservative votes from elsewhere in the state. Guess what? Guess how Democratic the 5th congressional district in Georgia is. I've got it pulled up here. Okay. As of right now, Kwanzaa Hall, obviously a good Scottish kid, is the current representative in the 5th district. As you can see here, forever, it has voted overwhelmingly Democratic. Okay. Jacksonian Party, which was soft Democratic, obviously. And then pre-Republican Party. Other than that, yes, Charles Prince for a term. James C. Freeman for a term, or for short of 2 years. Other than that, you see a fucking amount of blue here. And you know why this district is quite famous? Because that guy where I still have my arrow left on, John Lewis, one of the chief race baiters that was there for 33 goddamn years until he fucking fell over. He was the dude who slandered the Tea Party. He said that they were calling him racist epithets when he was walking up the steps, even though there was no evidence of that ever occurring. And Andrew Breitbart, before he died, had a $100,000 bounty out there for anybody to produce any evidence that the Tea Party was out there yelling mean words at John Lewis or spitting on him. So, yeah, trying to say that you're living in this swamp of republicanism is a little bit of a fucking stretch there, pal. This devaluation of black votes, how? How is it a devaluation of black votes? I'll let him continue. Our political system to ignore black lives, and the consequences are devastating. How so? Unequal representation has led to unequal healthcare outcomes, which the COVID-19 pandemic has only worsened. With sufficient voting power, black communities receive substandard education, and politicians are free to appoint judges who sanction mass incarceration, abusive policing, and electoral disenfranchisement. Well, you should have kept voting for John Lewis all of that time, and even before John Lewis got in. Remember how long you have to go back. 1973 was the last time that you had a Republican in there. So just like the downfall of Maryland and what we're seeing right now with Los Angeles, San Francisco, New York, you elect those people who keep putting in that substandard public option that for all intents and purposes just take your votes for granted, so you get what you deserve. This is all by design. Aha, voting for the same thing over and over again is the design, I see. The Constitution framers set up the Electoral College to protect the interest of slave states. Really? That's hot. I think there's an amendment in there that says if any state is participating in slavery, their votes don't count in the Electoral College. I'm just, far be it from a Canadian to tell a race baiter something about his own constitution. But let's continue. Along with the Senate, the Electoral College was critical in the endurance of slavery and its continuation by other means. Abolishing the system would mean that ballots cast by black voters, or any voters for that matter, would count the same. Oh, really? So that means that only politicians like, I don't know, the presidents would only have to pander to the large hub cities like New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, Houston, and disregard the other 99% of the country. Obviously, that's a great idea. The Electoral College is there so that the states like Wyoming, which you love to disparage, states like Montana, Or there's 2 senators from each state. So California, because it is so deeply blue, or New York, because for the exact same reasons, they have the option to vote for somebody who is not going to continue those exact same policies. And that's the reason why there's so many different little districts in there, so they can have their voice heard at the different levels, so that it's not mob rule. The Electoral College is a genius idea that needs to be expanded to the state level, okay? For every district to have a certain amount of electors to be picked. Just like how Nebraska and Maine have it. They have the 3 different, I think it's in Nevada, or not Nevada. In Nebraska, there's the 2 electoral districts, and in Maine, there's definitely 3. The fairer and much more decent way is each state is broken up into the little districts, and that's where you get your representatives from. That's where you get your electors from, rather, sorry. But anyways, there's another way to undo the damage of the Electoral College and other structurally racist political institutions. Oh, like what? We can implement vote reparations by double counting ballots cast by black residents. Now, how would you do that in a secret ballot system? Would you have a blacks only box and a whites only box? I don't know. I think they tried that before, but kind of got rid of that because it might have been racist. Just saying. The poisonous legacy of slavery applies to black people regardless of when we or our ancestors arrived in this country. Just like how black people are so proud of Kamala Harris for coming over and becoming the first black woman vice president, or half black, because she's also, I think, Indian, right? Not like quarter me Indian, but like quarter dot Indian, right? And she's also not African, so she wasn't actually a slave. But in a crazy turn of events, her grandparents were slave owners. Grandparents, like people that she would have met. So he wanted to vote for her twice, by the way. Vote reparations should also extend to Native Americans. No thanks, I'm alright. Slavery is rightly called America's original sin, and you will never let anyone forget it. We get it. Fucking Christ, didn't you get your mule in the mail? But so too was the United States genocidal seizure of land from its original inhabitants. Fucking blow your brains out already. Jesus Christ, I'm tired of that. Okay, if they were stupid enough to take those itchy blankets, they deserve to have their land taken from them. Various legal forms of disenfranchisement. I don't know why that's so weird. This guy tries to use $10 words in his fucking trash article. Have applied to them. It wasn't until 1962 that all Native Americans were allowed to vote, and even then they faced and still faced electoral obstacles. Well, that's not necessarily a fair take, and I was kind of unaware of this, so that's we learned something from Brandon here, so. In any case, Congress didn't give History Channel, didn't give Native American people voting rights at the same time either. The Constitution gave states the right to determine voting rights, with the exception of the 15th and 19th Amendment, in which many states violated anyway to prevent black people from voting, but they still had the right to vote in most states anyways. Yes, Jim Crow, yes, all that fun stuff. There were plenty of white Americans who didn't want Native people voting in their states. In the late 1930s, one of those Indians went over to Old Town once to see some official in the city hall about voting. An Indian canoe maker in Maine. He said he was an Indian. We don't want you people over here. Oh, that's not very nice. We don't have... Oh, you have your own electors over there on the island, and if you want to vote, go over there. Well, if you're not going to integrate with society, why do you think you should get something for free? I don't understand that, but at the same time, yes. Yeah, this picture's a little bit damning to his statement there. Native Americans registering to vote circa 1948. So, okay. Yes, it wasn't allowed in every state, and yes, that was rectified, as you can see here. Native Americans were only able to win the right to vote by fighting for it state by state. The last state to fully guarantee voting rights for Native American people was Utah in 1962. Okay, well, Utah, you should have got your fucking shit together before that. But, you know what, let's not act like it was a fucking widespread thing at that point. Okay, and 1962, just in case your clock's broken, was 58 years ago. So, we can continue to bitch about that kind of stuff if you want, but I don't find it necessarily productive. Yeah, and as you can see here, it wasn't until 1962 that all Native Americans were allowed to vote. Trying to make it seem like Native Americans weren't allowed to vote until 1962. These were not the only examples of American oppression, which should include in-vote reparations, others who suffered similar disenfranchisement. Dude would really hate my reforms for voting, which would include, having to have skin in the game as the short version of what I'm thinking, but hey, I've already done a couple of videos and my opinions on that, but this is about debunking this. less than hot take. One of the largest objections to monetary reparations is the impracticality of implementing them on a scale that would meaningfully address the injustices. Vote reparations, in contrast, would be a simple, low-cost way to begin to make amendments. Because, okay, where there is overwhelming black turnout, let's just say everything about this election was fine and hunky-dory. Those cities suck a massive dick, okay? Every single one of those cities has been burnt to the ground in the past, this summer? Do you think Detroit has a thriving economy? How long ago was Milwaukee on fire? What was that, Freddie Gray? Or was that Sprite and Skittles? I can't remember. But Milwaukee, that was, not but 5 years ago. Pennsylvania, don't make me laugh. And Atlanta? Jesus, they're still sweeping up that Wendy's and putting it in the trash can. So what are we talking about here? These aren't necessarily cities that tend to vote for their best interests instead of just, keeping the same lie going over and over and over again. Oh, so this guy isn't even coming up with anything new. He's just recycling somebody else's idea. Theodore Johnson, a senior fellow at the Brennan Center for Justice, discussed a similar proposal in 2015 in the Washington Post. Ugh. So you know it's a good take. Well, his plan to make black American votes worth five-thirds. Oh, okay. So, yeah, he's just as hack as this dude. Has a poetic symmetry, to the 3/5 clause in the Constitution. Yes, we get it. That was terrible, but it was at the same time a very long time ago. We shouldn't bind a remedy to the mathematics of the compromise that formalized and furthered the dehumanization of black people, but you're totally fine doing the inverse of that and dehumanizing people who don't get twice as much of a representation for their vote. I understand where you're coming from. That bargain allowed the very people who stripped us of our rights to have the votes counted for even more than other white people in Congress and Electoral College. So this is all about power. This is just a big old power grab, okay? He's like, no, I have a big brain, therefore everything that I say is law, and I should be able to enact my policies over whatever those stupid hillbillies out there think. But it's not only the way politicians have legally denied representation to black people. This country's history of poll taxes, literacy tests, gerrymandering. Oh, that's your party to a T, my dude. Voter purges and intimidation should all be addressed. Tying a remedy to the 3/5 compromise implies that clause was at the heart of the problem, and it wasn't and isn't. Counting black votes twice keeps the point clear and provides redress for a myriad forms of disenfranchisement deployed against black voters. Keep perpetuating the victim narrative. Thank God we're almost done. Vote reparations would create possibilities to build what W.E.B. Du Bois called abolition democracy. I hate that. Let's just do a little 10,000-foot overview on this one. W.E.B. Du Bois coined the term abolition democracy in his study Black Reconstruction in America in 1935. So again, this guy's just like a really old hack. Like he takes really old ideas and tries to just tell you that the people living today are just as bad as people from back then. To denote the ambition necessary to achieve a racially just society. If you have to add a qualifier to justice, that means that there's no justice whatsoever. Du Bois argued that the reconstructive work began in 1867 and necessary to achieve that ambition was aborted with the end of Reconstruction in 1877. The result was the abolition of slavery was only accomplished in the narrow sense that chattel slavery was ended. Oh, but they still had control of our minds, let me guess. But the true ambition of abolition democracy, namely the creation of a racially just society, was never realized. And you're just going to keep on beating that drum forever. So this guy's just an old racist. Okay, we get it. Or the practice of achieving a racially just society, abolition democracy, invites us to engage with abolition not as a finite goal, but a radical process of challenging injustice whenever and in whatever forms they may appear. Does that sound like Black Lives Matter to you guys as well? Because that sounds like just a group of people that just want to burn down the entire system and build it up with their version of what the fuck this is. This guy just sounds like a mouthpiece for the cause. I'm going to go ahead and pull up the tenets of Black Lives Matter and see if this kind of makes sense. So yeah, right on their about page on Black Lives Matter. We are expansive. We are a collective of liberators. Sounds familiar, who believe in an inclusive and spacious movement. We also believe that in order to win and to bring as many people with us along the way, we must move beyond the narrow nationalism that is all too prevalent in black communities. We must ensure we are building a movement that brings us all to the front. Interesting. Like, you want to have a more superior voice than everybody else. You don't want to have equality whatsoever. We affirm the lives. Where did we hear that? Probably, within the first paragraph there? Of black, queer, and trans folks. See, just trying to sectionate everybody else so that you create this hierarchy of the most oppressed. So would black, queer, and trans folks' votes count 3 times? I don't know. Disabled folk, illegal aliens, folks with records, felons. Interesting. That's a weird way to put things. Women, and all black lives along the gender spectrum. Binary system, you idiot. Our network centers those who have been marginalized within black liberation movements. We are working for a world where black lives are no longer systematically targeted for demise. And all you need is people like Brandon to keep telling you that they're systematically oppressed and targeted for demise. Right. I understand. You're just trying to keep your own lie going. It's kind of like a positive feedback loop. It's like there's oppression. Somebody tells me that there's oppression, therefore there's oppression. And we keep going until you want to break your own cycle and make your own life better. Then that's how you realize that nobody's actually out there trying to keep you down. I don't know. We affirm our humanity. Enough with this fucking pat on the back society. That's what happens when you give every kid a participation trophy. And I understand that that's a hack thing to say. But when people talk or run around talking about they need to be affirmed all the time, we need to affirm our existence. That's just like, yes, okay, yeah, you matter, okay? If you're that fragile, we don't need you speaking up. Your voice does not matter. If you're such a weakling that you constantly need to be told how great you are, I don't want to hear from you, okay? Boy, does this sound like this dude is one hell of a BLM supporter. So yeah, let's get back to this vote. Reparations would empower us to replace oppressive institutions with life-affirming structures of economic, social, and political equality. Yeah, really? You just want to put your idiots in place to make the rest of the country as shitty as those places that are represented by the people who just want to go and collect a paycheck and sit in Congress and just yell, racism every once in a while. And if our elected representatives did not prioritize this transformational work, we could vote them out. Only you guys could, because then it would take me and a friend to go in there and vote. Well, actually, I would get, 1.5 votes? Is that how that would work? Because my quarterness would get it. Whatever. I don't care about it that much. Because white votes currently count more than black ones, let's just go ahead and surrender that point, apparently. Double counting black votes would restore electoral balance. Vote reparations would be a giant step towards remedying our nation's long history of denying and devaluing black votes. Yeah, there's amendments to the Constitution that already took care of that. Anyways, to address systemic racism, we must transform how we choose our government. I agree with the second half of that. We must transform how we choose our government. Exactly. But the way that we get there is not something that you would appreciate. Even if vote reparations aren't instituted, black voters will keep tirelessly dragging our states towards a more perfect union. That is frightening. I don't want a perfect union. I want an imperfect method that constantly strives toward a better future. Trying to achieve perfection is a fool's errand. Okay, that's like trying to achieve the utopia that all of these socialists keep calling for. It's never going to happen. Never, ever, ever. You might be able to create it within your own house or with you and your dog, but outside of that, it's literally never going to happen. So trying to strive towards perfection, you're just going to end up driving yourself into further insanity, Brandon. But just imagine our country if our votes counted twice. I can. And I can also look at Detroit, Pennsylvania. Said Pennsylvania, but I meant Philadelphia. But to be completely honest, Pennsylvania is just as corrupt as Philadelphia is. I can look at these other countries where votes are dubiously counted several times. We're going to take out the context of the 2020 election at this point. And I see how those countries get transformed and turned into banana republics or military dictatorships when somebody else counts the votes for you. Because it was Stalin who said it doesn't matter who votes, it matters who counts the votes. And I could not think of a more horrifying situation than that. Championing any racial group over another is racism, regardless what you're talking about. And this is one of the most racist articles I've ever seen. Not only is it just informationally incorrect, as we've seen a couple of times there, but all you need to do is just flip a couple of words around and this could easily end up on the Daily Stormer. Is that the white nationalist website? I think so. Yeah, and instead of an N at the end, it would just have a little swastika. So yeah, I thought that was atrocious and very wrong, even from the first couple of paragraphs there. So I thought I'd share that with you guys, and hopefully you learned something in there. And I could not imagine a world where voting twice is the norm, but it's something we can look forward to as long as mail-in voting continues. Anyways, guys, I thank you all very much for the gift of your time. I've been Don Consuelo. I want you to follow your gut and get after it. Take care, everyone.